Hello and welcome to today's session, Orienting VISTA Subsite Supervisors. We appreciate you joining us today as we discuss important elements necessary for orienting subsite supervisors. We also will have small group sessions to more closely focus in on what you feel is necessary and how we can create effective orientations for your subsite supervisors. The more you put into the large and small groups, the more you will get out of it. And I truly look forward to our learning together. Even though this session is focused on orienting VISTA subsite supervisors, you may actually glean insight into things that you can do to enhance the on-site orientation and training that you direct to your VISTA supervisors to provide to their VISTA members. I'm Eric Powell, and I'm an AmeriCorps VISTA training specialist at AmeriCorps in Washington, D.C. I happily served as a VISTA in 2006 and a VISTA leader in 2008, and I will be hosting and facilitating today's large groups discussion, along with providing instructions for the small groups and facilitating the chat activities and the live Q&A at the end of the session. Looking at today's agenda, we have a lot to cover in a short period of time. We'll briefly talk about who are subsite supervisors, then talking about the roles and responsibilities. We'll then have a large group discussion to talk about challenges and solutions and what things you want to include and know about orienting your VISTA subsite supervisors. We'll then go into small group discussions and talk a little bit about communication and support. And we'll finally wrap up today's session with resources and evaluation and answering questions that you may have. So let's begin. Who are subsite supervisors? I'm pretty sure it's obvious by now, but let's just make sure that we have the same understanding of what we mean by this term. We use the prefix sub in subsite supervisor because these supervisors are usually part of an intermediary VISTA project. And please note that this prefix does not in any way denote that these individuals are less important or have less work than staff at the intermediary. The prefix only denotes that these supervisors are not the project director. They are direct AmeriCorps VISTA supervisors who supervise members at a site and then report information up to the intermediary. They have a lot of responsibilities, like many of us in the world of AmeriCorps VISTA, and they're responsible for making sure that the VISTA members and leaders have what they need to succeed. Subsite supervisors, as I'm sure you know, are essential to the success of your project and the VISTA program because they provide day-to-day support and guidance for the member. They assess progress in relation to the VAD, and they give the intermediary VISTA project information for reports to help determine what else can be done to benefit the project. Most importantly, they are people, just like you and me. And of course, we want to value them and want them to feel valued. If there's any chance of succeeding and thriving, then we have to do our part to create and cultivate lasting, meaningful relationships with them. And there will certainly be bumps along the way, but intermediaries and subsites are in it together, all for the same purpose, and hopefully with the same vision. So think about what makes orientation engaging and fun, similar to the pre-session chat activity that asked you to identify and think about what you most enjoy about being in an orientation, so that you can use that information to engage the subsite supervisors and get them to be just as excited about the VISTA project. Because of course, their energy will help bring excitement to the VISTA members and the leaders who can in turn motivate and empower the community. Let's take a look at the roles and responsibilities to help clarify some expectations and assist you in more efficiently and effectively working with your subsite supervisors. If these roles and responsibilities are familiar to you, then this will simply be a good refresher now. In general, subsite supervisors must understand the rules, regulations, and mission of the AmeriCorps VISTA program. In order for them to succeed, it's important for their orientation to include the foundational elements and really connect their work with the mission at hand. It's essential for them to know the structure of the intermediary project, who they go to with questions, how the overall VISTA project is organized, even how their subsite fits into the intermediary. That context will help orient them to their physical and immediate surroundings and work with the project. Of course, day-to-day VISTA direct supervision. is a necessary component. VISTA member success and satisfaction are clearly and directly connected to effective supervision. And you would be surprised just how many VISTA members get all the way to their first day of service and they let us know that they don't even know who their supervisor is. So make sure that you tell your sub-site supervisors they must let their VISTA members know the name and contact information of their direct supervisor to set them up for success. Regular and consistent communication, no surprise, with the Intermediary VISTA project goes without saying, and it's an important responsibility of yours. And of course, you need to put together information from your VISTA members and leaders and send it to the intermediary so that they can submit the reports to AmeriCorps for the overall project. So let's talk about responsibilities of each entity. Responsibilities of the intermediary include recruiting, vetting, and selecting the sites. And just as you recruit, vet, and select VISTA members, you need to be intentional about the types of sites you want and make sure that they adhere to the VISTA mission and regulations, as well as to those of your sponsoring organization. Training all sub-site supervisors. Certainly, those supervisors obviously get a lot of information from the VISTA campus and webinars that we do, but it's critical that you adequately train them and give them the information that they need to be successful with your project. Partnering with sub-sites on specific duties that involve or would benefit from both entities. Intermediaries are also responsible for managing the entire VISTA project and ensuring that it is being run in accordance with the rules and in good standing. Compiling all information from the sub-sites and submitting the required reports to AmeriCorps via eGrants. And assessing and evaluating the VISTA project from their own point of view, as well as getting feedback from sub-sites. In order to improve, it really helps to know what is working and what needs work. Here are some responsibilities of sub-sites directly. They're responsible for getting VISTA members started successfully, as we mentioned earlier, by onboarding, orienting, and guiding them in their exciting new year of adventure. Making sure that the VISTA member has a direct supervisor who will support and coach the member, as well as ensure that they are following the rules set forth in the VISTA member handbook. Reporting on-site specific activities and evaluating the progress of the VISTA members at the site, as well as the collective progress of the sub-site. And there may be other responsibilities and tasks that the intermediary assigns to the sub-site supervisor. In looking at both, there are some shared responsibilities between the intermediary and the sub-sites, and those include working on outreach, recruitment, and the selection of VISTA members and leaders, developing, reviewing, and updating VISTA assigned descriptions or VADs, creating, implementing, and evaluating the on-site orientation and training for VISTA members and leaders, working together to solve problems, identify solutions, and plan next steps, and tracking data for reports, gathering required information, and evaluating the VISTA project while making notes of areas that need improvement and plans to actually make those improvements. Now keep in mind, with the shared responsibilities, it really is in the VISTA project's best interest to discuss what responsibilities will be shared, what that partnership looks like, and how it will work. We want to make sure that you don't assume that people know what they're doing, because it's critical that you communicate abundantly and effectively to all of your sub-sites. Let's be honest. You already know what a good orientation is and why a good orientation is essential. So we won't belabor the point, but we will use that knowledge to begin talking about some critical components that make up an effective orientation. Without even doing any research, our experience likely tells us that orientation is important because it provides a solid foundation from which your sites and your sub-site supervisors can grow and build, including sharing the mission and vision and the project goals. And as a philosopher Plato once said, the beginning is the most important part of the work. So we want you to start off strong. The work does not stop once the beginning phase is over, but focusing efforts at the beginning may help you more easily sustain your progress and be effective at training your sub-site supervisors. And when your sub-sites join and become part of the VISTA project, you want them to be and to feel engaged to interact with you. You want them to be involved, and of course, to learn as much as they can. The more engaged they are, likely the more engaged your VISTA members and leaders will be. It makes a huge difference to provide each oriented individual a clear understanding of their roles, how they fit in, and how everything in the VISTA project comes together. So we're going to ask you now to use the chat panel to mention specific challenges that you have, or if you don't have any, challenges that a VISTA project may have, along with potential solutions when it comes to orienting sub-site supervisors. And because, truth be told, and even with all of the positive elements of orientation, setting people up for success is not always a successful endeavor. And as you see comments in the chat, feel free to add additional and innovative solutions and opportunities to support your colleagues and to learn from each other. We know that VISTA project directors, supervisors, sponsor staff, and you are certainly busy. And we know that that work in this area is not always easy or quick. However, with support and guidance, you can make it a lot easier and you can benefit from other ideas and comments. We want to help you and others think about how to turn seemingly negative situations into positive situations. And I see quite a few responses are slowly coming into the chat. Some of them are mentioning one of the challenges they're experiencing is a slow process of recruitment of our VISTA. That definitely would be a challenge for especially the sub-site supervisors as well as potentially the intermediary, depending on how involved they are with recruitment. And I'll mention just a couple more challenges with supervisors showing up to trainings or being willing to commit adequate time to training. That's a big issue. And lack of VISTA training resources in other languages than English, absolutely. Delayed onboarding, shared understanding of performance measures and sticking to them. These are, I was going to say great. You don't really want to think about challenges as great, but these are critical challenges. And as we go through and look at some of these specifically, I also encourage you, if you have ideas from your VISTA project or comments for some of the supervisors in relation to some of their challenges, please type them in the chat and we'll try to get to some of these a little bit later on. And as you continue to share, definitely think about your posts and your comments. And when you think about supervisors and project staff, they often mention their excitement for utilizing each other as a resource. And not just today's session, but one other way that you can do that and connect with each other as a resource is continuing this and other conversations in the Supervisor Cafe discussion forums on the VISTA campus. So looking at a lot of the obstacles and challenges that people listed in the chat, we know that some of them are easier than others, some of them are more time consuming. But we also know that there's some of them that you can prevent and mitigate by considering what to include in your sub-site orientation. It's not going to fix everything, but it might help to fix a few of them in the future. And then of course, reflecting on how to incorporate it into the orientation. So you'll want to make sure that your orientation includes the big picture overview, including an organizational chart and an outline of the project's goals. An overview of AmeriCorps and specifically the VISTA program. A strong emphasis on the mission of the VISTA program and its capacity building focus to eliminate poverty. An outline of the VISTA project that goes into much more detail about the purpose of the project and how you plan to get to the end result with the help of the subsites and the VISTA members. And an explanation of how the subsite and intermediary are connected and work together. And as I continue to mention some of the items that we know that it's important to include, and you do as well, in the orientation that you will conduct for your sub-site supervisors, we want you to also think about and type in the chat what, if anything, specifically you already include in your VISTA project sub-site supervisor orientation. And if you don't yet plan it, or if you're not the one involved in that, what do you feel is essential to include? We know that there's tangible items, but there's also fun things to engage people. In your comments may give other people some ideas, and we'll review those comments in just a minute. We know that you want to work with your subsites to show them the following. And this may sound a little bit like deja vu because some of it I am repeating very quickly from earlier in the slide because of its importance. So you want to make sure you include what you plan for recruitment, as people talked about that being a challenge, and the selection of VISTA members based on the VISTA assignment descriptions. Ideas and previous examples for onboarding VISTA members and conducting the on-site orientation and training. Your expectations of your subsites pertaining specifically to supervising VISTA members and what they need to know, while also identifying what things are absolute must-haves and what other things are simply nice to have. And you also want to include the communication plan, including how your subsite should communicate, to whom they should communicate, appropriate procedures and protocols, etc. Also, you want to make sure that your subsite supervisor orientation incorporates the specific rules and regulations of the VISTA program, an explanation of the prohibited activities, including why they are prohibited and the repercussion for violating this, mentioning that VISTA is not an employee nor an intern, but a national service volunteer intended to help build the capacity of the VISTA project. Best practices and recommendations for supporting VISTA members through coaching, feedback, and more. Suggestions on how to solve problems and identify opportunities for growth. And this oftentimes pertains to subsite supervisors solving problems, but it also pertains to helping VISTA members think about how to solve some of their own problems. And then the necessary things they need to know about reporting and evaluation, as we mentioned earlier. So looking back at the chat question that asked you what you already include, I see a lot of people they talk about the Hatch Act, which is an absolute must. They include things wish I would have known, which is great, especially if you have subsite supervisors who leave and new ones come on, talking about, I wish I would have known this to help them plan for the future. Some projects include reporting. They talk about prohibited activities. Ooh, I like this. Scenario-based discussion on challenges that VISTAs might have. That's great, and helping the VISTAs to think about how they could solve those solutions. Capacity building versus direct service, time tracking and reporting. I wish my orientation when I was a VISTA was this good. These are great ideas to include in a subsite supervisor orientation and very, very important. So keep those coming and certainly think about if any of those can apply to your project or you might be able to use those in the near future. And as you continue to add your ideas in the chat, we want to make sure that you and your subsite supervisors are well equipped for their role, know what they are doing, and also have what they need. With much of the knowledge and information and ideas that you now have, here are some tips we'd like to share with you and some resources for orienting subsite supervisors in addition to what you had already mentioned in your breakouts. Remember that you can share and find information and tailor it to the needs of your VISTA supervisors. Everyone wants success, that's for sure. You as well as your subsite supervisors. So let's give you some ideas to help. Some of these may be familiar to you, and you should be able to add more to this list specific to your needs. Remember the opening chat question that we asked you as you joined the session? The question was about your favorite part of participating in orientation. And we asked that intentionally because that's an important element in your planning, because oftentimes your favorite part may be also what your subsite supervisors enjoy, and it may be a way you can incorporate their interest into the orientation as well. Also, don't feel that you have to think of everything on your own. Part of the greatness of these small and large groups is that you can share resources, solicit ideas, and you can even solicit ideas from your soon-to-be or new VISTA subsite supervisors. Don't forget you can ask other staff, board members, and volunteers what they think makes an orientation meaningful and engaging. Throughout, and especially at the end of the orientation, make sure you have your subsite supervisors evaluate the orientation. You can create neutral questions and consider questions that rate aspects of the orientation, as well as have some open-ended questions. Put your draft plan together and have other project staff give you feedback. That'll give you insight that can make a huge difference into an effective orientation. And once you have at least one or a few somewhat seasoned subsite supervisors, considering partnering with some of them to help you plan, implement, and evaluate the orientation, because their ideas, having been a subsite supervisor, carry a lot of weight. And of course, remember to aim towards reciprocity. Like you, they want the same things. So as you develop your orientation, you can add in elements of interest that'll help make the orientation much more engaging. Don't forget that in the chat, you can find a link to the Helpful Links handout, which you can access. And this was developed to provide you some resources and materials, especially on the VISTA campus, to help you plan, execute, and reflect on the orientation you coordinate. And next, I want to have us reflect on our agenda. We'll take a look at what we covered. So in looking at our agenda today, what we covered, we started with who are the sub-site supervisors. We talked briefly about the roles and responsibilities of sub-site supervisors and intermediaries and shared responsibilities. We had a little bit of a large group discussion about the challenges and some of the solutions. We then segued into the small group discussion where you had a chance to include and discuss what sub-site supervisors really need to know, as well as effective communication and support. And we also gave a couple of tips and recommendations. So before we get to a couple of your questions, we do want to ask you to evaluate this session. We ask you to evaluate every session. I do look at every single piece of feedback you submit. We want to not only encourage and expand the offerings that we have, but also improve them and try to see if we can have sessions on other topics that are of interest to you. So please take a moment when you have a chance to fill out the survey, and we greatly appreciate your feedback. Final note is next month, we are going to be having 2 sessions, which is abnormal. Gives me a lot more work to do, but that's okay. So the first one is Tuesday, December 1st at 1 o'clock Eastern. We're going to have another Zoom meeting like this one that has breakout groups. And this one is titled, Appreciation is in the Air, Show VISTA Members You Care. And that's really focused on getting mostly you, a little bit of me, discussing what ways can you show you appreciate and honor and recognize your VISTA members remotely or in person. So it'll be a great conversation. We encourage you to register. And then secondly, on December 15th, as part of our regular monthly webinar series, this one will be on being an effective VISTA sub-site supervisor. And the difference is that session will be focused specifically for sub-site supervisors, containing a little bit of similar information today, but going into a little bit more depth about what they need to know from their end as an actual sub-site supervisor. So we encourage you to attend. These are optional, but we recommend you attend if you can. And so next, we're going to see if we have any questions. Again, please type your questions in the chat. I'm scrolling through to see if we have any questions. I see one question came in earlier, and that was in relation to, will we get an invitation? So you should get an invitation, I'm going to say in about a week to sign up for those 2 webinars, but I would recommend if you're able to and if you're interested, go ahead and click the link in the chat now and sign up now just so you don't forget. But yes, hopefully next week I'll be sending out an email to all the supervisors letting them know about the upcoming webinars that we have available. I see another question that says, are there updated AmeriCorps organization, I can't talk. Updated AmeriCorps organization charts available? I will find out. I know, as you know, the agency has been going through rebranding from CNCS to AmeriCorps, and we're updating a lot of information, updating the website. So I believe we do have one available. I will try to find out, and if I can find it, I will include it in the follow-up email that goes out tomorrow. And if not, it'll be available soon. But I know we have a huge team working on a lot of the rebranding stuff as we continue to expand our offerings and hopefully make a big difference in your communities and in the nation. The next question is, does VISTA ever plan webinars? Oh, I lost it, but I think it said, does VISTA ever plan webinars in Spanish? And I can't see the rest of the question. I will say at this time we do not. We have had a couple of VISTA member orientations for VISTA members in Spanish for those VISTAs in Puerto Rico and a few other places who needed specific Spanish language. It is certainly something I can write down and consider. It's a great idea and a great option, so I will make that note and I will see what we can do. I'll check with my team. I know we do a lot of webinars, monthly webinars for supervisors, members, and leaders, and it definitely can be a challenge to get a contract to do the translation, but I will see what we can do because that would be great to offer that. Let's see, how do I find my regional office? Is it Hunger Free America? Great question. So according to us, your AmeriCorps regional office would not be Hunger Free America. It sounds to me like Hunger Free America is probably your intermediary or the overall VISTA project. Your regional office, and I can send this out tomorrow as well in the follow-up email. There's a different organizational chart that shows where all the regional offices are located. And usually it's based on the state where your VISTA project is managed. So if you're in an intermediary project, you may have VISTAs in 20 states, but there'll be one state and by default one region that would manage your VISTA project. And every project has a regional office that oversees their project. If you don't know, again, I'll send out an email tomorrow, but you can also reply to the email tomorrow if you have a specific question, and I can point you in the right direction to answer that question. And thank you, Kelly Daly, for posting that link in the chat. That's exactly what I was looking for, so greatly appreciated. Again, if you have any other questions that I didn't answer, I want to see, we still have about 3 or 4 minutes before we finish. We certainly thank you for joining the session, but if there's any urgent questions people have about subsite orientation or what to include, I know in a lot of the small groups, there was a lot of discussions about what not to include, but also some projects have really good ideas of what they already include. So hopefully all of you who took notes will email those to me, and again, I'll send out a reminder tomorrow and I can share those with everyone. Is there a supervisor template that helps keep us organized for reporting? There is information on the VISTA campus. If you go to the VISTA campus and type in reporting, there's obviously a lot of information on reporting, but there's a pretty simple list that outlines the 5 or 6 reports that your VISTA project would oversee. Keep in mind that if, depending on your role, whether you're the VISTA project director or a subsite supervisor, you may not be the specific person at your site to fill out all those reports, but if you are an intermediary, you'd want to make sure you let your subsites know which reports they had to fill out, if any, and which ones were filled out by the intermediary. Usually intermediary projects fill out the large reports like the PPR, the Project Progress Report, and the VISTA Progress Report Supplement, and things like that. And I see one more question. That is, are reporting performance measures different for each intermediary? So the answer is yes and no. And certainly I know I have colleagues in the chat who will provide additional comments. The answer is yes and no. There are general performance measures as part of AmeriCorps, the organization, and working with the VISTA program, but there are some measures that your project may not specifically report on. For example, if your project has not or does not yet work with veterans, that may not be a specific category that you have to report on if that's not part of your current work. So the performance measures that your project reports on might be slightly different based on what you're doing, but overall, AmeriCorps as an agency does have specific performance measures that VISTA projects apply for. So with that, I'm going to wrap up the session, and I will say again, if you have questions, feel free to reply to my email tomorrow. I will certainly send out more information. I do really want to give a huge thank you to quite a few people. Thank you, of course, to our support team, Barbara Reynolds, Andy King, Chris Hawks, many people who provided insight to working on this session, Gina Viner, a lot of people who had a lot of assistance with this. I greatly appreciate their help. I also want to thank Jeff Banis and Mike Dietz for helping us to manage the Zoom technology and work out the wonderful breakout options we had. And of course, I would not be remiss, or I would be remiss, I never know what that phrase is. Let me just say, I want to thank you for the very tireless, but also very hard and important work that you do as VISTA project sponsors and supervisors. We greatly appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you on a future supervisor webinar. Thank you very much.